A normal Lamborghini is already excessive. The Diablo GT asked a more dangerous question. What happens if we stop pretending this is a road car? The answer was a carbon fiber missile that looked barely legal, sounded violent at idle, and treated public roads like a technicality. This wasn't a supercar trying to behave. This was Lamborghini stripped of manners, loud, raw, and unapologetic. By the late 1990s, the Diablo was aging, still theatrical, still brutally fast, but the supercar war was escalating. The Diablo GT was born from racing influence and internal obsession, a machine designed to blur the line between street weapon and circuit tool. Only 80 units would exist, every one built with a single priority: intensity. Start with the engine. The standard Diablo's 5.7-liter V12 wasn't enough. The GT expanded it to 6.0 liters, breathing through an intake system that looked closer to race hardware than road engineering. Output landed around 575 horsepower, enormous for the era, but peak numbers weren't the headline. Delivery was. No turbo smoothing, no electronic safety buffer, just immediate mechanical violence the moment your foot moved. The throttle response felt wired directly into your spine. At full song, the V12 didn't scream politely. It roared like industrial machinery under strain. Low 3-second 0 to 60 runs, top speed around 210 miles per hour. Late 90s performance that bordered on absurd. But raw speed wasn't the point. The GT existed to change how the Diablo felt. Lamborghini attacked weight with obsessive focus. Carbon fiber replaced traditional body panels. Interior trim was stripped to essentials. Sound insulation was reduced. Comfort became negotiable. The GT wasn't luxuriously minimal. It was functionally aggressive. The result was a car that felt tighter, louder, more exposed. Vibrations traveled directly through the chassis. Road texture wasn't filtered. It was transmitted. You didn't sit in the GT, you were wired into it. And that wiring changed the psychology of driving. Every throttle input felt consequential. Every steering correction felt amplified. The car constantly reminded you that physics was in charge, and you were negotiating with it at speed. Visually, the GT might be the most aggressive Diablo ever signed off for public roads. Massive fixed rear wing, deep front splitter, vented hood channeling air into cooling systems like a race prototype. Widened bodywork stretched around enormous tires. Nothing subtle, everything deliberate. Park it next to a standard Diablo and the GT looks predatory. The stance alone feels confrontational. This wasn't elegance, it was intimidation engineered into sheet metal. Underneath, suspension tuning shifted toward mechanical grip above all else. Stiffer springs, revised dampers, geometry focused on high-speed stability. The GT cornered flatter and harder than any previous Diablo, but it demanded discipline in return. Driving it wasn't casual, it was confrontation. The clutch was heavy, the gearbox stubborn until warm, steering effort physical, visibility compromised, cabin heat unavoidable. But once the car settled into motion, something strange happened. Precision emerged. At speed, the GT felt locked in. The chassis communicated constantly, not politely, but clearly. Every input came back with information. Grip levels felt mechanical and honest. The car didn't isolate you from danger, it explained it. And that explanation is the essence of the Diablo GT.
It didn't flatter the driver, it tested the driver. Every mile felt like negotiation. No filtered inputs, no electronic correction, just analog truth delivered at triple-digit speeds. It represents the outer edge of Lamborghini's pre-digital identity. Performance before polish, emotion before comfort. Because the GT wasn't built to compete with Grand Tourers. It wasn't chasing comfort metrics, it chased emotional purity. Lamborghini concentrated into its most volatile form. Owners didn't buy it to commute. They bought it to experience something mechanical and unrepeatable. A car that felt alive in a way modern supercars rarely dare to be. Something that required courage, not just money. And that reputation spread fast. The GT became mythological almost immediately. Stories circulated about how demanding it was, how physical it felt, how it punished hesitation. Not because it was flawed, but because it refused to hide its nature. It forced drivers to rise to its level, and in doing so, it previewed Lamborghini's future. The 6.0-liter architecture influenced the final Diablo evolutions. The carbon obsession shaped the next generation. The philosophy of ultra-limited extreme variants became a brand signature. Every later Halo Lamborghini, the wild special editions, the track-focused monsters, carries a trace of the GT's DNA. It was a blueprint disguised as a farewell. But unlike modern hyper-managed performance machines, the Diablo GT still carried chaos at its core. It didn't feel engineered by committee.
It felt engineered by people who believed fear sharpened the experience. That's why collectors worship it today. Not because it was comfortable, not because it was the most advanced, because it was gloriously unhinged. A machine built in the narrow window before software started editing personality out of supercars. A car that demanded skill, strength, and willingness to wrestle with physics at speed. Only 80 exist. It was Lamborghini pushing its identity to the limit. A manifesto on wheels declaring that performance should feel dangerous, emotional, and unforgettable. And decades later, in a world of launch control and algorithm-managed grip, that philosophy feels almost extinct. The GT stands as proof that a supercar doesn't need to be friendly to be legendary. Sometimes, it needs to be terrifying. And the real question it leaves behind isn't whether it was wild. It's whether a modern manufacturer would ever dare to build something this honest again.